Jake Humphries, round 22 of the NRL is upon us. It is 3:52 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sydney time. And I've been pretty much going over this NRL card for the last 5 hours, doing my write-ups, which you're going to be reading soon. And now it's podcast time to kind of get a little bit more in-depth with these games and kind of speak about a little bit a few of the things that I didn't exactly write about. As I've mentioned in the piece, the write-ups are going to be basic. They're just going to have my thoughts, and then the podcast I'm going to be able to go a little bit more in-depth with everything. Now, Jarryd Hayne, that's the topic of conversation. Everyone's been talking about Jarryd Hayne. What's happened is this former rugby league superstar who was perhaps on his way to becoming, an immortal with the Parramatta Eels. Obviously a big call, but had arguably one of the best seasons of all time in 2009. Was travelling along nicely before he decided to go off and play American football. Had a stint at the San Francisco 49ers, where he made the 53-man roster and had made a few plays throughout the regular season and then walked away just on the basis of, I think, him just not being confident enough that he was going to get game time. Had a bit of a trial with the Fiji Rugby Sevens team, trying to get into the Olympics, and he failed to do that. Mind you, Jarryd Hayne left the Parramatta Eels with a heavy heart. He said that it's one of the hardest things that he ever had to do was leave the Parramatta Eels, and I believe that he said before, during, or whatever, the whole process that he was going to come back and play for the Blue and Gold, or he couldn't see himself playing for any team other than the Blue and Gold, blah, 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 blah. Now, what happened while Jarryd Hayne was gone was that the Parramatta Eels, used the money that was vacated when Hayne left and picked up some big signings. Picked up Michael Jennings, picked up Kieran Foran, picked up all these kind of players, picked up Corey Norman, and tried to make a push for a premiership, essentially. And what they did was they broke the rules. They went over the salary cap, and they were found out for doing that, and they lost all of their points they had earned up to a certain point in the season, which put them out of finals contention. Now, after they lost all of their points, mind you, this is why while Jarryd Hayne was overseas, so none of this happened when he was there. They lost all of their points, and then after that, a couple of their big signings and leaders started going off the rails. Kieran Foran had a gambling problem and a TAB spree where he was spending thousands of dollars betting. He ended up in rehab. Corey Norman was charged for some sort of offence, off-field indiscretion. Not sure exactly what it was. Can't remember. Probably doesn't really matter. So right off the bat, your two halves are mucking up. Guys like Michael Jennings and Semi Radradra have been falling over injured. The fan base is dwindling or at least very upset at the moment. I don't blame them at all. So salary cap problems with the major players, the most important players. Just the team is down in the dumps right now. Really, really bad spot for the Parramatta Eels. Kind of reminds me of the Cronulla Sharks a few years ago when they had the Asada investigations going on. Not a lot of people were happy about supporting them. And that's what's happening with the Eels. Right now they're kind of they're in a shameful situation. And this all happened when Jarryd Hayne was overseas. Now, Jarryd Hayne obviously wanted to come back to the NRL at some point. And he has just signed a deal with the Gold Coast Titans for 2 years. I'm not sure on the exact figure. But a lot of people are giving Jarryd Hayne crap for doing that. And I think that that's a little bit cheap. I think that Jarryd Hayne is well within his rights to make a decision that's in the best interest of his playing career and his purse. The Parramatta Eels did say they made Jarryd Hayne an offer. Then Jarryd Hayne came out on his Instagram and said no, he didn't in fact receive an offer. And I don't really care if he received an offer or not. Jarryd Hayne can do whatever he wants. He can play for the Gold Coast Titans. He can accept more money, or he can choose to go to a team that has more stability, that has a brighter future. The Parramatta Eels are in shambles, and I know that Jarryd Hayne was a loyal Eels player and, sort of preached his loyalty and love towards the club, but sometimes things change, and Jarryd Hayne's obviously bounced around a lot. He's wanted to achieve a lot of things in his sporting career, and he has done that. And he's come back, and I guess it was in his mind that he was still going to play for the Eels, but he said that he didn't receive an offer for the Eels. From the Eels, and you know what? I don't really care if he received an offer or not. he can do whatever he wants. Jared Hayne can do whatever he wants. There's going to be Eels fans who are upset, but Hayne has made a decision that is probably going to suit him better, and he's probably going to be in a team that's contending for a premiership a bit sooner than what he would have been if he had have stayed at the Eels, given the direction that they're going, and just given the mess that club's in right now. He's jumped in with the Titans, and he's signed a good deal, and I can't hate on a guy for that. And I can't put a guy down for doing that. And I know the Eels fans are going to be upset that he's not back with them. But it is what it is. We've seen things like this happen all the time. Jared Hayne's a professional athlete. He's well within his rights to do whatever he wants. And even though he did kind of make a verbal commitment to Parramatta, things change. And Jared Hayne kind of took those changes on board and made a different decision. And that's the bottom line. He can do whatever he wants. He's going to be excellent for our game no matter where he's playing. Jared Hayne, the NRL is much better off with Jared Hayne playing. It doesn't matter where he is. He's going to provide a lot to the sport. And it just sucks for Parramatta Eels fans that it's had to go down this way, kind of, worsening the situation for them. But, Jared Hayne's his own man. He's an athlete and he can go wherever he wants. And I'm sick of people giving him crap about making a decision that's probably in his best interest. So we'll leave it at that. That was my little rant on Jared Hayne. And sorry if I'm a little bit low on energy. It's very, very, very late / early here. And I've just tried to kind of knock this card out in one night. Excuse me. So what we're going to do right now... Sorry, I've got a horrible cold. A lot of people are getting sick around my university at this time. We're all living in close quarters, and the germs are flying around left, right, and centre, and it's really killing a lot of us. They're not killing us, I hope, but it's really affecting us. Now, the first game is tonight, 7:50 p.m, between the St George Illawarra Dragons and the Brisbane Broncos. Now, both of these teams are struggling. Both of these teams have had a very, very poor month or two. And the Broncos had a really tough time throughout the Origin period, and we kind of thought, hey, well, maybe they're just struggling because they always do in the Origin period. They have so many players out. They have so many players committed to the Origin series. So you think, hey, maybe that's just what's happening to them right now. But they came out of the Origin period. Their players were coming back in, and they were still performing badly. That rock-solid defence that we saw earlier in the season was starting to let a few tackles slide, starting to concede a few more points than what we're used to seeing from them. And all of a sudden, they're a mid-level team. They're coming sixth on 24 points. They've won 10 games and lost 9. And if they lose a couple more games, they're probably going to start to think about a legitimate possibility of them missing the top 8. They need to win tomorrow night to have at least the top 4 in their sights. And, if they lose tomorrow night, they can still make the top 8, obviously. So I won't say it's a must-win for the Broncos, because I don't use the terminology must-win until it's a mathematical must-win, because anything can happen. The Broncos are still in 6th, and if they lose this game, they're going to be on 24 points with 4 games to go. So they're still going to be in a position to put themselves in the top 8, but they really do want to win this one if they want to play from inside the top 4 when the season's over. Now, the Dragons, they've slid a lot, and you're kind of getting into must-win territory with the Dragons here. They're on 20 competition points, which isn't awful, but what is awful is they're minus 161 for and against, which is the second worst in the league, only better than, of course, the woeful Newcastle Knights, who have a differential of minus 401, which is absolutely unheard of. So Dragons host the Broncos at WIN Stadium in Wollongong, which is probably a little bit of a fortress for the Dragons. They play well there. I think they've won a few. I think they've had 3 games there this year. If I can cast my mind back, they beat the Panthers there early on by a couple of points. And they had a pair of games in the Origin period. I think they're 3-0 in Wollongong this season. They beat the Melbourne Storm, and I think they beat the North Queensland Cowboys there as well. So this will be their 4th game in Wollongong against the Brisbane Broncos. And the Brisbane Broncos have owned the Dragons over the last 5 or so years. They've won 9 of their last 10 matches against the Red V. And the Dragons aren't helped in this one by the fact that Tyson Frizzell has been ruled out with a suspension for touching the referee. And, it's a real tricky one, because the judiciary in the NRL, they don't want there to be any grey areas with this situation. What happened was Tyson Frizzell got penalised, or one of the Dragons players got penalised Frizzell was running back to get in position and brush the referee out of the way. Kind of pushed him in the chest, and there was no intent in it. There was no malice in it, but at the same time, don't touch the ref. Just don't do it, because we can't be having situations where Tyson Frizzell's touching the ref. Yeah, it wasn't very bad. He didn't mean to do anything, but then you've got another guy who might be pushing the ref or doing it with a little bit of intent. I don't know. It's not impossible to avoid touching a referee. Tyson Frizzell could have run around him. He could have stopped. He could have done anything, but he pushed him, and it didn't look horrible, but it didn't look great either. He pushed the referee out of the way, and I know it seems like a bit of a petty thing to miss a game for, but the rules are the rules, and it's just easier if we don't touch the referees at all. And that's it. So he's gone. Tyson Frizzell is missing in a game where, he needs to be able to help his team win. And in addition to Tyson Frizzell being out, Joel Thompson is missing, who's another back rower who plays for the Dragons, who is a strong edge runner, provides a lot of grit to their forward pack, and he's out. He got hit with a grade 1 charge against the Dogs last week, so probably their two best back rowers are gone. And Brisbane welcome back 3 high-profile players, Josh Maguire, Matt Gillette, and Sam Thaiday, who are all representative players and all absolute workhorses for the Broncos. Josh Maguire is a really tough, up-the-middle prop, plays really hard. Matt Gillette is a real handful for halves because he'll be running on the edge quite a lot. Whether it be Ben Hunt, I believe it's Ben Hunt. Yeah, he'll get service from both of those players. I'm just trying to figure out who plays on his side, but either way, he's going to be charging at some of the smaller plays on the edges for the Dragons, and then Sam Thaiday, who's a veteran, gets through a lot of work, gets through a lot of tackles, and those 3 guys are going to help make the Broncos a little bit more like the Broncos, and they're all coming back now. You look at this one and you see the line at 12, you see the big odds in favour of the Broncos, and you think, well, these aren't pretty, and the odds aren't pretty for this one because, the Broncos aren't a team that you can trust odds on right now, especially not at $1.20 or $1.25 to be precise on Bet365. It's really tricky, this one. The Dragons, as poor as they've been recently, they're still capable of holding a team out for big chunks of games. They held the Bulldogs to 13 points in the first half, but 0 points in the second half. They play teams very, very tough at Wynn Stadium, and I think you'll see a pretty spirited go from the Dragons, but I think they'll just end up falling off a little bit in this one. The Broncos need to win it so badly, and it's hard for me to see the Dragons keeping up with the stars that Brisbane have on the paddock. The Dragons just don't have the players that Brisbane have. The Dragons have Benji Marshall and Gareth Widdop, who are a satisfactory halves pairing. But when you talk about the potential of Ben Hunt and Anthony Milford, with Darius Boyd back there, with Andrew McCulloch there, the Dragons are still missing their best attacking weapon in Josh Dugan. They just don't have enough. I think that you could see a grind in this one, and I love the grinds. I really hope we see a low-scoring game here because I love watching defensive footy. And I think that that's what the Dragons are going to try and do. And I think we could see a halftime scoreline of 10-6 in favour of Brisbane or 8-4 or something like that. But I think as the game wears on, the Broncos might just have a bit too much strike. Might have a bit too many players, James Roberts, Matt Gillett, just punching through holes. I just think towards the end, they might just get the Broncos by, a dozen points or something like that. They might just get the Dragons by a dozen points, something like that. I think the Broncos just have a bit too much to play for. Even though the Dragons are still in finals contention, I think the Broncos, it is about time they got a win and got a relatively impressive win. Now, on the basis of what I've just said, look, it is hard for me to back either team. It's definitely hard for me to back the Broncos with the 12-point handicap we're seeing at a lot of bookmakers. I'm not going to back the under. I've spoken about me liking the under, and that's just because Dragons and Broncos, they are capable of grinding. But, I don't give a crap about who's capable of what. The fact is that I haven't seen unders trend strongly in quite a long time. They've been creeping in recently, and I've been loving it as an unders better. But I'm not going to be chucking wagers on it yet. Now, the first pick I have for this game is a market called Get the Gap. And Get the Gap is a combination of 2 handicaps, and what it is St George Illawarra Dragons plus 22.5 and the Brisbane Broncos minus 2.5. And what you need to happen is for both of those bets to hit. So I guess in simple terms, what I need to happen is the Broncos to win by 3 to 22 points. So there's a 19-point window there. The Broncos by 3 to 22. That's how I can explain that. And that's $1.70, and we're going to put 2 stakes on that with William Hill. Now, the second pick is going to be a pick-your-own-line market with Brisbane, Sportsbet, at minus 9.5, which means the Broncos need to win that game by 10 or more, and that's for a single stake. So the biggest lean is on the Broncos to get the job done by, 3 to 22 points, as I said. Get the gap, $1.70. And then another lean is on the Broncos to cover minus 9.5, just in case they do get that big win. And let's hope that the Broncos win by 10 to 22 points in both of these cash. I think the Broncos will have too much. I can see the Dragons maybe worrying us a little bit early on, holding out, playing strong defence, maybe even nabbing an early try. But I don't see them matching it with the Broncos for the entire game. They just don't have it. The Dragons' attack is very bad. They went side to side a lot. I was talking to my friend last week, and they kind of do the same thing every single time. They got, a couple of lead runners. They'll flick it to the first receiver, who's normally Benji, and he'll flick it behind a lead runner, who's probably going to be a second rower. They'll get it out to Gareth Widdop, and he'll flick it behind another lead. It's just crap, It's just like it's really rudimentary stuff. And I'm not a coach, and I know that what McGregor knows is 50 times what I know. But it just seems like they're a little bit too basic in attack. And another friend of mine commented on one of my statuses on Facebook saying they've got poor fifth tackle options, and that's something that I agree with as well. They're not very polished in attack, and I don't know if that comes down to coaching or it comes down to personnel, probably a little bit of both. But they need to get things sorted, and against a team like the Broncos, who have been lapsing in defence, they're still not a bad defensive team. I think the Dragons are going to struggle. I think we're going to see a win from the Broncos in this one. You heard the plays. Get on it right now. The next game is on Friday night, and it's one that I'm really excited about, the Parramatta Eels versus the Manly Seagulls, 7:50pm at Pirtek Stadium. The Eels are a 7.5-point home dog. The total is 40.5. The Eels play their second last game at Pirtek Stadium this season. Hang on, I'm just going to have a quick edit here. The Eels play their second last game at Pirtek Stadium to round out a disaster year for the Blue and Gold. That's what I've got in the first line of my write-up. And as I've got here, as if things weren't already bad enough, Jared Hayne just announced a commitment to the Gold Coast Titans, which would have shattered hearts throughout West Sydney and their supporters base in general. Obviously, there's Eels fans all over Australia, or maybe even all over the world in some places. And Manly are climbing up the ladder. They're in 11th, and they could be inside the top 8 in a few weeks' time. So, the Eagles have a really, really hard run home after this. They play 4 teams, 3 of which are in the top 8, and one of which, the Panthers, that one team that aren't in the top 8, are in 9th, and could very well be in the top 8 with a win this weekend. So they're playing good teams, and Manly sitting on 20 points with 5 games left would probably need to win 4 out of the 5 games. So they've got a really hard run home, and I don't think this is going to be an easy game for the Seagulls. The Eels are welcoming back 3 really, really, really quality players. Michael Jennings, Manu Ma'u, and Beau Scott are all back in the team. And the Eels are still not a team to be taken lightly at Pirtek Stadium. If I told you at the start of the year that I could get the Parramatta Eels +8 at home against Manly at Pirtek, you'd tell me I'm absolutely crazy. But, things change, things happen, and right now the Parramatta Eels are a pretty big home underdog against Manly. Now, don't get it twisted. Manly have played good this last month. They had a huge win over the Knights, but a huge win over the Knights isn't something that you're going to be writing home about. The Knights are pretty much falling over to everybody, at least when they play away from home. Manly, they are doing well. If I can have a quick look at their form guide and what they've been doing recently, I know that they played a couple of pedestrian teams. They beat the Bunnies, they beat the Knights, so they've actually won 4 in a row. So the Dragons, the Warriors, the Bunnies, and the Knights. One of those teams is in the top 8, and the rest of them are outside the top 8. They actually kind of had a month of footy against teams that were really, really on the down. And now the Eels are certainly on the down, but the Eels, they've still turned in a couple of good performances, man. Like, I've got to give credit to Brad Arthur and the boys for kind of keeping their heads up and continuing they've won a few games, or at least turned up in a few games that I didn't think they would turn up in. A game on a Friday night at Pertec against the Roosters come to mind, which I believe was their last home game. They keep turning up for each other. They had a really, really good first half against the Panthers when they played there a couple of weeks ago. They were run over by the Titans in the end, but they're not coming out and getting blown away. And I think you're going to see that trend continue on Friday night. I think they'll play Manly really close in this one. Everybody loves playing against Manly, or maybe not loves playing against them, but everybody, Manly are that team that everyone wants to smash. And I think that runs from the supporters all the way down to the players. I think that a Friday night game at Pertec Stadium against the Manly Seagulls is enough motivation for any club to kind of, get out of bed and get onto the pitch and have a real dig. And I think you're going to see that from the Eels. When a team's faced with extreme adversity, extreme negative media, you can see it go one of two ways. You can see it kind of spiral downwards and the team gets smashed, or you can see that a team really roll up the sleeves and turn one on for the crowd or for each other. And I think you're going to see the Eels have a good crack. I think Manly could win this one by single digits, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. But also I like the Eels as an underdog here just to get it done outright. I'm going to take them against the spread, but I really think that they've got a chance to win this one outright. On the basis of what I've just said, I think that they're pretty fed up, and Manly, we may be under a little bit of an illusion with Manly in regards to how good they actually are. They beat up on some pretty bad teams. They've still got a bit of a patchy squad. Their forward pack's pretty weak, and the Eels have some big boys. Danny Wicks is playing really well. Daniel Alvaro is a good contributor. Manu Ma'u, Tepai Moeroa, Kenny Edwards. I believe all three of those players that I just mentioned are in. Kenny Edwards actually may be out. No, he's on the bench. So you've got Kenny Edwards on the bench. You've got Tepai Moeroa. You've got Manna and Wicks starting. De Gois is a real hard-nosed bloke. And Manu Ma'u and Bo Scott. This Eels team, for mine, is probably better than what Manly's is on paper anyway. And, with the exception of a dodgy halves combination, I think they can really front up to Manly and match it with them in the forward pack. So the play right now that I'm giving you is 3 stakes on the Eels plus 8 at Unibet for $1.86. And that's a big one. And I like it. I like the Eels plus the points. I think the Eels are going to come out there and they're going to have a crack against Manly. And I don't know if Manly are as good as what their recent results indicate. I guess we'll find out. I could be wrong. And, that happens, man. That happens. I've been wrong a lot this year, and I'll be wrong a lot in the future. But the Eels plus 8 is what I'm going with for the second game. And that is that. Now, the third game is the Newcastle Knights versus the Canterbury Bulldogs, 3 p.m. at Hunter Stadium. The Knights are a 16.5-point home underdog. The total is 43.5, and we could have rain on the menu for that one. Now, the Newcastle Knights might just be the worst NRL team I've ever seen, but I'm giving them a decent chance against the Bulldogs team who've scored 13 points in 2 weeks of footy. So the Bulldogs 2 weekends ago went up to North Queensland, and it was kind of a gut check game for the Bulldogs. Kind of, what can they do? Can they match it with the elite? And how are they going to go on the big stage? And they lost 36-0. They then came back against the Dragons in a fixture where they were favoured by 16.5 points. They won by 3. Now, the second consecutive week, they have a 16.5 line to cover. And they're going to try and do it against the Knights, who are 3-1 against the spread in their last 4 home matches. And as I've said before, they tend to do a lot better at home. They had an ATS win against Melbourne. And for all of you that don't know, ATS means against the spread. They had an ATS win against Melbourne. And they've had a few others thrown in there as well. Against the Dragons, they had an ATS win. I think they covered just. So, yeah, the Knights kind of play with more spirit at home, and that's what you'd expect. I mean, the Knights have fallen victim to a little bit of a really severe case of a rebuilding process. Like, there's been a lot of people who have told me that Wayne Bennett ruined the Knights with all of the veteran old players that he brought in there, and then they kind of moved on quickly, and they've been left short-handed, and they've had young blokes in there. I don't know. I guess that's true to some extent. I mean, Bo Scott, Darius Boyd, but now that I think about it, I don't think the Knights have ever really had a star-studded roster, except for back in the Joey Johns, Robbie O'Davis days. I feel like the Knights have always been a little bit short-handed. They've always had injuries. I mean, Jared Mullen's always been injured. Kurt Gidley's always been injured. they've let a couple of guys go, like Chris Houston went overseas. Kurt Gidley went overseas as well. It was kind of past. He was kind of done. I don't know what the Jared Mullins always seems to be injured. There's not a lot I can say about the Knights other than right now they have the least talented roster in the NRL. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of inexperienced guys who are getting thrown into the deep end. And I'm just happy for the Knights this weekend that they've got a few guys back. Jared Mullen, Matt Aora, and one other player who I cannot remember right now. It is Pat Matautia or Matautai, however you want to say it. So the combination of Jared Mullen and Trent Hodkinson is a much better one than Jack Cogger and Trent Hodkinson. And no disrespect to Jack Cogger, the guy has, had his moments, but in the NRL you need to be ready. You need to be ready. You need to be physically ready. You need to be mentally ready. And he's a small guy who struggled in the NRL. It's as simple as that. And Jared Mullen is a built bloke. He's got an excellent passing game. He's got an excellent running game. And his kicking game is satisfactory. But Jared Mullen, when he gets going, when he gets his passing game going, when he gets his running game going, when he takes the line on, Jared Mullen's a really dangerous proposition. And Trent Hodkinson, I think, needs Jared Mullen in there. He's been struggling a little bit with the workload because Cogger hasn't been doing as much as what Mullen would normally do. But Hodkinson's a great goal kicker, has a pretty accurate kicking game, long and short. And I think that these two complement each other well, with Hodkinson being more of a structure-based player, kind of getting to his kicks, whereas Mullen can kind of take the shackles off a little bit and run and be a little bit creative. So I love the way these two guys work together, and I think that Hodkinson is a much, much better player when Jared Mullen's in the lineup. And I think that if Jared Mullen was in the lineup all year, then you wouldn't be hearing the same criticism towards Trent Hodkinson that you're hearing now. Without all that being said, we are where we are. Jake Mamo's playing fullback for the Knights. Nathan Ross is on the wing. Dane Gagai, Peter Matautia, Brendan Elliott. So a very inexperienced backline, with the exception of Dane Gagai, who has played a lot of footy. But I like the forward pack. Matt Aora, Daniel Safidi, Corbin Sims, Paulie, and Jeremy Smith. A lot of hard-nosed blokes there. The Bulldogs, their team is, they have one in, one out. Tony Williams is in. Greg Eastwood is out. And if you're going to ask me right now, well, who's better out of Tony Williams and Greg Eastwood? Who means more to the team and who would you rather have in? I'm telling you Greg Eastwood every single day of the week, because Greg Eastwood, more often than not, you're going to get 100% out of him, and sometimes Tony Williams doesn't show up. So I think that Greg Eastwood is a pretty big out for them, and he is a creator of a lot of their second phase footy. He's a great one-on-one defender also. But when the Bulldogs are playing their best footy, it's when you're watching the Bulldogs, if you have money on the team that's playing the Bulldogs, you tend to be on the edge of your seat more than if you're betting against another team, because the Bulldogs, it's like when they start to get a roll on, you can see it, and you start to get worried. Like, oh, here comes Cassiano, here comes Tony Williams, here comes an offload, here comes a late pop at the line forward to forward. Like, the Bulldogs have a really interesting style, and they rely so much on their subs. When Cassiano comes on, seriously, he may be the most devastating impact player in the competition, because that change of pace and that change of size, a fresh Sam Cassiano, like he's got a relatively good tank for a big boy, but the first 10 minutes you get out of him are absolutely devastating. And against a young Knights team, when he's going to be running at guys like Daniel Safidi and guys like Sam Mataora, some of these guys who, aren't as experienced, Paulie, even Corbin Sims, like Sam Cassiano needs, you need to get men in there in numbers, and he's a guy who can really, really trouble people. And then when you talk about the Bulldogs forward pack, you've got Josh Jackson and David Clemmer, who's playing lock, who's built like a front rower. Aiden Tolman, James Graham. This Canterbury Bulldogs team, when they get a roll on up front, they are so hard to stop. But the issue with the Bulldogs is they lack direction in their halves, and sometimes Reynolds and Mbai go missing. Sometimes they kick when they should run, and they run when they should kick, and you just don't know what's going to happen. I think they lack a bit of attacking prowess in the centres. I think Josh Morris, although is an athletic guy and combines very well with his brother and also defends very well one-on-one, doesn't have that clean line break ability. And Curtis Rona is doing well in the centres And I would say Curtis Rona is probably playing better in the centres than what Josh Morris is. It's still not his position. Brett Morris is great coming back. I love Brett Morris, what he's doing. He scored 7 tries in 5 appearances this year. But as you can see, Josh Morris, 5 tries in 17 games. Probably not doing what he should be doing, Josh Morris there. But having said that, he's probably still going to be able to do some damage against his opposite number, which I believe will be Peter Matautia. You know, now even saying that, if you look at Dane Gagai and Peter Matautia versus Josh Morris and Curtis Rona, that seems to be a pretty even matchup for me. The Knights have got some good quality outside backs. Let's get back to the game. We're 30 minutes into this podcast, and we're only at the third game. So let's get back into the game. And I'll tell you the plays. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the last 4 paragraphs of what I've written. Here we go. I've set myself a general rule of never backing a team with the plus points unless I think they have a chance of winning the game outright. The Bulldogs are known for falling into a win-loss type form guide, and after a scratchy win over the Dragons last weekend, I'm certain they won't cruise to victory here. If Canterbury can get a roll on through the middle and work their offloads consistently, they will be a handful for the Knights. However, Newcastle will have their runs throughout this one, and with a solid halves pairing, they should have enough creativity to keep this one within the spread. So on the basis of what I've just said, my first pick is the Newcastle Knights plus 16.5 handicap at the odds of $1.90, stake 2.5 on Bet365. And my second pick is alternate Team A points over 11.5, $1.63 one stake with Sportsbet, which means I like the Knights to score over 11.5 points with Sportsbet there. That's a total outlay of 3.5 stakes, and we're moving on to the next game already. Quickly. And yeah, it's getting late here, man. I've got to get to bed. We're 31 minutes through, and I'll try and keep this one under an hour, so I might pump through these last 5 games a little bit quicker. Preview. Cronulla Sharks versus the Canberra Raiders. So the Sharks had a draw on Monday night in one of the craziest games I've ever seen. A lot of missed field goals, a lot of controversy when you talk about James Maloney and Andrew Fafita and the coin toss, and they had everything. It had coin toss problems, it had field goal problems, it had post-try problems, it had diving leg tackle problems, it had Greg Bird versus Paul Gallen, it had everything. It was a great game. And I have been saying since the dawn of time that the Gold Coast Titans are a for real, legit, well-coached team. We were backing them against the spread like there was no tomorrow earlier in the season. We've cashed. I'll tell you something. The Gold Coast Titans over the last 3 or 4 seasons are easily the most profitable team to back against the spread. I saw it on William Hill. They are the best against the spread handicap betting team in the NRL. And that doesn't surprise me at all. They're undervalued. They've got a quiet but overachieving roster of players, and they just keep plugging away. So good on them. Good job getting a draw out of the Cronulla Sharks. And they're going to work towards this weekend's matchup and see how they can fare down the stretch. Now, the Cronulla Sharks against the Canberra Raiders. The Canberra Raiders have won 3 of their last 4 matches in Cronulla, although the Sharks have the overall advantage over them in terms of win-loss. They've already beaten the Raiders once this weekend, this year, where they went down to Canberra and absolutely thumped them. But what I'm sensing for this game is it can go a couple of ways. I mean, the Sharks were exposed a little bit on Monday night. They kind of switched off at the beginning of the second half. And the Raiders are cruising. The Raiders haven't lost in a long time, man. They are genuinely under the radar. The Raiders are. And they're going to come into Cronulla with a wealth of confidence after absolutely putting one over the South Sydney Rabbitohs 54 points to 4. And the Cronulla Sharks have, they had to travel south on a plane from the Gold Coast. Who knows? I'm not going to suggest they'll be fatigued, but it certainly was a physical game. The Canberra Raiders have a legitimate chance of beating the Cronulla Sharks this weekend. I'm a Sharks fan. I have been since 1999. Funny story, what happened was on the weekend, I'm just going to cut away from the topic. I was at the pub or the club or whatever. I walked in there and one of my mates who was a Sharks fan was talking to one of my mates who was a Roosters fan. And I walked in there and I said, "How you going, Callum? Go the Sharkies. How good are they?" And the other guy said, "Look, mate, I'm from the Shire. I go for the Roosters. Why do you go for the Sharks? Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the Central Coast." He said, "Well, why do you go for the Sharks?" And I said, "Well, look, the Central Coast don't have any teams there, so I can go for whoever the hell I want." He said, "All right, so why'd you pick the Sharks?" And what he was thinking was, hey, this guy has seen a 15-game winning streak and jumped all over the Cronulla Sharks last minute. He said to me, "So what made you go for the Sharks? When did you start going for them?" And this guy, I laid it on this guy like there's no tomorrow. There's nothing that pisses me off more than people telling me that I am going for the Cronulla Sharks excuse me, because of their recent successes. I have been through some of the worst times with the Cronulla Sharks. I've been through Asada. I've been through wooden spoons. I've been through Greg Bird glassing his girlfriend. I've been through Tavita Latu assaulting his girlfriend. I've been through all of these off-field, on-field indiscretions. I've been through everything. I've been through John Morris pushing over the marker against Manly and losing our game. I've been through a 28-0 loss in the preliminary final of, I believe, 2008, when we were equal minor premiership with Brett Kamali and maybe even Brett Seymour. But I started going for the Sharks in 1999 when I saw them lose a preliminary final to the St. George Illawarra Dragons on the back of some Nathan Blacklock craziness. Been going for the Sharks for 17 years strong. And I told this guy, I laid it all on him, and he said, all right, fair enough. So if you ever want to know why or when or how or who or whatever, anything about the Sharks, just take it to that time of the podcast and you'll be able to find out. Up the Sharkies. However, it's going to be a tough one for them this weekend against the Raiders. If I can charge through this one pretty quickly, there's no real ins and outs for this one. James Maloney was cleared. Edric Lee, he's the only omission from the Raiders team, and he's making way for Brenko Lee. And Cronulla has been a happy hunting ground for the Raiders as they've won 3 of their last 4 in the Shire. The Sharks match with the Titans on Monday night could evoke a couple of different results, and maybe the Raiders saw some weaknesses and they'll be ready to capitalise on the short turnaround. But maybe the Sharks will be angry, and they'll be angry that their winning run came to an end, and they'll iron out the mistakes they made on Monday. So it's really tricky, but the Sharks, as Josh has pointed out before, like winning the close ones, and I don't see them blowing out a Raiders team who are going to be so up for this one, in my opinion. I think the Raiders are really, really going to rock up. And I think in this one, it's going to be close. And it's time for our trusty triple margin V with William Hill. Either team by 11.5 or less. That's $1.90. That's 2 stakes. That's what we're going with. And then the second pick will be a plus 6.5 handicap in favour of the Canberra Raiders. And that's going to be 1 stake as well. Now, moving on. And I am literally I am so tired right now. I've got to get through this one quickly. So we have 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 games left. I'm going to pump through these in about 10 minutes, I reckon. Because I've hit the wall. I've hit the wall. Melbourne Storm versus South Sydney Rabbitohs, 7:30pm on Saturday night at Amy Park. Storm minus 18.5 favourites, rather. And the total is 42.5. Greg Inglis is coming back to this one. For this one. And look, I will not pick the Rabbitohs against the spread. It's just not something that's going to happen, and I cannot lay 18.5 with anyone ever. I hate this game. I hate the total. I hate the line. I hate everything. The only thing that I'm going to do in this game is an anytime try scorer market. I will tell you a quick story about Will Chambers. Last year, Will Chambers was maybe the best centre in the NRL. He was scoring week in, week out. The bookies were pricing him at 210, 220 week in, week out. He's just come back from injury recently. He's played 10 games this year and scored only 2 tries. However, he's going to be opposite Hymel Hunt, who is returning from injury. Hasn't played a lot of footy this year. The Rabbitohs have a horrible goal line defence. They've conceded 20 points in something like 20 games, or they always concede at least 4 tries. The Storm are going to get their moments. They're going to have their shifts, and I think Will Chambers is going to look more like Will Chambers. He is the only pick. 1 stake, $2.20. Will Chambers, anytime try scorer. Do not talk to me about that game ever again. The next one, here we go. This one is a game that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. Gold Coast Titans versus the New Zealand Warriors. Cbus Super Stadium. The Titans minus 4.5. The total is 44.5. This should be a dry track, I hope. Will Jared Hayne play? I don't care. Jared Hayne has not played rugby league in 2 years. And if he comes on, I don't think his presence is going to have that much of a positive impact for the Titans. And as I said in the article, he'll put bums in seats and might create a half break or 2. But I'll be surprised if he single-handedly changes the game this weekend. The Titans showed exactly what they're about last weekend with a 90-minute slugfest against the Sharks, which resulted in an 18-all draw. But the Titans need to keep producing. And so do the Warriors. The Warriors had a good win last weekend. A great win, in fact, 20-16 in extra time. I loved it. But let's cut the crap. The only thing that I care about right now is the fact that the Warriors own the Titans. They own the Titans, mate. 11 of the last 12 meetings between these two teams have been won by the Warriors, including 5 straight at Cbus Super Stadium or Robina or Skill Park, wherever you want to call their home ground. The Warriors own the Titans. They're plus 4.5. They've got a really strong roster. They've got an informed Sean Johnson. They've got Lolohea, Fusatua. I love the Warriors. I love the Warriors in this spot. This match and how I approach this match is why people who haven't been watching the NRL for years cannot succeed consistently betting on the NRL. I look at this game and it screams Warriors to me. Now, I can always be wrong. The Titans could win this one by 40 points, but the Warriors are in a position right now, in a betting position where they are incredible value. Plus 4.5 at 3 stakes. You know what's happening. The Warriors are going to have a really good game. And you know what? This Jared Hayne crap is driving the line further in our favour for whatever reason. The Titans are a good, bloody strong, good team, but I don't love them as favourites. And the Warriors are still a really good team. They've put together a good patch of form ever since the Origin period started, and they own the Titans, and they haven't lost. I don't know if they've ever lost in the Gold Coast. You can hear it in my voice. I love the Warriors plus 4.5 this weekend. It's the only play for this game, and we're moving on that note. Warriors plus 4.5. Next one. West Tigers versus North Queensland Cowboys. Time 4 p.m. venue, Leichhardt Oval. Line Tigers plus 6.5 total, 43.5. No Luke Brooks for the Tigers. No Jonathan Thurston for the Cowboys. Now, the Tigers, they've been kind of annoying me with the way they've been playing their footy lately. They've been taking the 2 points every time they get the chance, even though they don't have a good goal kicker. They've been kind of playing in these low-scoring games, which is going against the history of the world. The Tigers have always been an offload kind of, can't tackle, can't defend, but can score 30 points kind of team. And lately they're kind of trending under a little bit. And the Cowboys, even though they're known for being able to score points, they have a really tough defense. So I wouldn't be too fooled by a total of 43.5 in this one. I've got no interest in playing that. What I am going to do is play the Cowboys halftime, full-time for 1.5 stakes at $2 and play the Cowboys minus 5.5, which is an alternate line with William Hill at $1.81 for a stake and a half. So we've got a total of a 3-stake outlay. And my reasoning behind this one is just the fact that, look, the Cowboys, they are better than the Tigers, man. Let's not beat around the bush. The Cowboys are better than the Tigers are. The Tigers have no Luke Brooks. They still have James Tedesco, who's a great player. But the Cowboys, even though they're missing Jonathan Thurston, they still have Lachlan Coote. They still have Jason Taumalolo. They still have Michael Morgan. They still have Matt Scott, James Tamo. This Cowboys team is fantastic. And the Tigers, this is going to be a rockin' full house at Leichhardt Oval. Does that worry me? Yeah, it does worry me a little bit. In fact, it worries me so much that right now, I hope you're listening, I'm changing this to 1 stake each, not 1.5 stakes each. The element that's worrying me is just the sheer home ground advantage that the Tigers are going to have in this one. There's going to be 18,000 people there. There's going to be people across the road on the roofs of their houses cheering for the Tigers. The atmosphere is going to be crazy. The Tigers could come out hard and maybe even ruin that halftime, full-time, I'm not sure. But if the Cowboys silence that stuff out, they complete their sets, they tackle like they've been tackling, defend like they've been defending, and take their chances when they get them, the Cowboys are capable of winning this game by 20 points. Seriously. Take the Cowboys. Look, you know what? Luke Brooks, him being out, it's a big loss. Because Luke Brooks, when the Tigers are firing, Luke Brooks and Mitchell Moses are firing, okay? And I think that him being out, they've got a guy coming in by the name of Jack Littlejohn. He has played 6 NRL games, okay? His second NRL game this season is against the Cowboys, who don't falter too often in defence. Now, Jonathan Thurston's missing, but Ray Thompson is coming in, who has been playing for a long time, Ray Thompson. He's a very seasoned guy. He can come in, he can fill a void in halfback or 5'8", or even hooker, and he can do a very good job. He is going to be a much, much, much better replacement for the injury than what Jack Littlejohn is. Now, we might even be having a little bit of rain coming into this one, and if it is raining here, that would play incredibly into the Cowboys' hands, given the fact that the Tigers need to throw the ball around, in my opinion, to win this game. I love the Cowboys here. I just think they're a better team. They are a better team. They've got a better roster. They've got a better forward pack. And I don't like fading home underdogs, especially when it's a Sydney home underdog and there's a team travelling down from Queensland. But if the Cowboys are serious about this season, they'll put the Tigers to the sword in this one. And I bloody hope it happens. I hope it happens because I love the Cowboys. As a fan, I love the Cowboys. The Tigers kind of frustrate me a little bit. Like, stop trying to pretend to be someone you're not. Cutting Robbie Farah, taking the 2 points from in front, 30 metres out and missing it. Jason Taylor's a bit of a idiot. He kind of annoys me. I don't know, man. Like, I don't like seeing... Look, if the Tigers can rack up the wins and get in the top 8, they deserve to be there. But I just don't think they're going to make any noise in the finals. I think the Tigers are a couple of years away from contending, and I'd love to see the Cowboys get a run so we can really have a dead heat for these top 4 spots. Tigers, go away. I like the Titans. I like the Warriors. I like Manly, maybe. Just Tigers, get out of there. I hope you lose. Preview. Sydney Roosters versus the Penrith Panthers. This is the last one, and I'm happy it's the last one because I'm just about done here. I'm going to read out my preview. The Roosters have been playing much better than their ladder positioning would indicate, and on Monday night, they'll look to once again play the spoiler role and put a dampener on Penrith's top 8 quest. The Panthers fought hard last weekend but went down in a Golden Point thriller against the Warriors. Both teams have named unchanged lineups from last weekend. These two sides have fought very evenly over the years, with the Roosters getting the share of the results by just one win. Although the Panthers have more to play for, it doesn't seem like the Roosters are taking the foot off the pedal as they played inspired footy for the last couple of months and will be looking to turn in another good effort this weekend. That'll do me there. So basically, let's read the rest. A trend that we've seen from the Panthers throughout most of the season is the tendency to involve themselves in close games. In what seems like a close matchup on paper, I expect the game to unfold the same way with a pair of evenly matched teams shaping up here. Although the Roosters sit low on the ladder, if they'd had this lineup from round one would think their positioning would be a little better. So what I'm suggesting here is that the Roosters are having a real crack. The Panthers always play in close games. They have a slight advantage because they're playing at home, but the Roosters are a good team. They have a good forward pack. Let's see. Is Jared Waerea-Hargreaves playing? I don't think he is. But let's look. No, he's not. Isaac Liu and Dylan Napa are playing. But you know who else is playing? Boyd Cordner, who is the hardest bloke in the NRL. Boyd Cordner, you are a legend. A legend. Boyd Cordner is so good. You know why Boyd Cordner is so good? He works his ass off, and he runs on the edges. He runs up the middle. He breaks the line out wide. He takes the ruck runs that no one wants to take. He hits hard. He runs hard. He's a clean player. Boyd Cordner is honestly someone who needs to have a Blues jumper on for the next 10 years. Listen to me. Boyd Cordner is a machine. Okay? Love him. Love him. That's my rap of the week, Boyd Cordner. I hope you heard it. He's an absolute beast. Now, the Panthers, they have a great team as well. Both these teams are unchanged from last week. And the Panthers, they don't mind playing at Pepper Stadium. Last time they played there, they beat the Eels, where they came home incredibly quickly against the Eels. And the Roosters are doing just enough for me to think, hey, they could really trouble the Panthers here. So the pick is going to be a triple margin V, the old school triple margin V. Either team by 11.5 or less, $1.85, 2 stakes with William Hill. Guess what? We're finished. If you haven't heard what you need to hear in this podcast, go back and look at what I've written up because the write-up's there with all the plays on it. I hope we have a booming week of NRL this week, and I'm so excited. I love the footy. This one should be a good round. Okay? Hope you like the podcast. We're going on 50 minutes now. My name's Jake Humphries. Platinum Sports Picks is my place, man. Josh Mikulev and I have been doing this for quite a while now. I have been doing Platinum Sports Picks for about a year now. And the NFL is right around the corner, and you have rocks in your head if you're not signing up for this NFL program. I'm telling you, man, it's $250. The same price for everyone, but we are going to absolutely tear it up. Last season, 84, 36, and 2 against the spread, 11 and 2 in the postseason. Denver Broncos Super Bowl correct pick. I don't need to keep saying it, man. You know what to do. Sign up for the NFL if you want to make money. It's my number one sport. I know more about the NFL than I do about the NRL. I could talk about the NFL for 3 hours and 50 minutes, not just 50 minutes, okay? So sign up for the NFL if you want to make some money. Over Christmas, you can make some money and buy some nice presents because that's what the NRL is going to be delivering. NFL, rather. Christmas has come early, man. 1 month until the NFL starts. It's going to be a big year. I hope you're ready for a good week of NRL betting. Oh, my God, I'm getting my acronyms all messed up. Hope you're ready for a good weekend of NRL betting. I'm Jake Humphries, Platinum Sports Picks. Good luck. I'll talk to you guys later.